Hi everyone, Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Setting, and once again it is a playoff version. The Winnipeg Jets opened the Stanley Cup Playoffs with an impressive 5-1 win over the Vegas Golden Knights in Las Vegas on Tuesday night. The Jets played very well. They played one of their better games of the season, in my opinion. The Golden Knights really didn't match up to them from start to finish. A lot of great performances by the Jets. Paul, you obviously, I've got Paul Friesen and Scott Billeck here with me to talk about that game and the series going forward. And Paul, just your initial thoughts on that game and the kind of statement the Jets made right off the bat.
I almost think it's the lack of statement Vegas made. I mean, I was stunned at how inefficient they were, how little offense they produced. I mean, 17 shots on goal. It wouldn't have surprised me if Hellebuyck had to steal a game down there, but boy, he sure didn't have to do that this game, and that's good news for the Jets because he's got that in him still to steal one in this series. But complete, I mean, okay, Vegas pushed at the beginning, right, and Hellebuyck had to be real good early, and he was real good early. I don't know if that was Jets jitters or what, but once they got through that, my goodness, I didn't see much from Vegas at all, and that really surprised me. And then what sticks out, of course, is Laurent Brossoit not ready for prime time, it looked like, right? And we knew the Jets would have an advantage in goal, but we thought it was, as I said earlier, Hellebuyck stealing a couple as Vegas swarms. That didn't happen. Brossoit handed this one in some ways to the Jets. Now, they were full marks. They were by far the better team. But that 3-1 goal by Wheeler was a backbreaker. That took Vegas's hope right out of it, and Brossoit's got to stop that. So you wonder what they'll do in goal going forward, and you assume they'll be a whole lot better too. But the Jets, that's not going to be enough. The way they play, fine. They play great, but there's more to come from Vegas.
Oh, there has to be. And Vegas is one of the best first period teams, especially at home. They usually kind of come out, attack hard, dominate, and then cruise from there. That's really their MO. The Jets took that away from them completely. The Jets played a great first period. They didn't score. I thought Brossoit was pretty good in the first period. He got lucky a few times too, but he was pretty good in that first period because the Jets were getting really good chances. They had 33 shot attempts in the first. Vegas only had 18. That's a pretty dominant performance, and I thought it really indicated what that game was going to be like, and the Jets carried it on the whole way. I guess, Scott, from what you saw, do you think the Jets can come out and punch them in the mouth again like that in game two? Or, do you expect a different plan of attack from Vegas because whatever they were doing in game one was not working?
Well, I mean, if you're Vegas, you have to have a different plan of attack because it obviously didn't work. What they were trying on Tuesday. I look at that game and I don't know, maybe we're just not giving enough credit to the way that the Jets played that game. Like, I mean, you can say, Vegas didn't bring their A game or whatever. Brossoit was bad, all those things. And those things are probably true. I thought the Jets played incredibly well. Everything that they needed to carry over from that final month-long stretch in the regular season. If plugged my preview here because this is the path that the Jets needed to take, and they took it. They came to the game. They were aggressive out of the gate. They were fast, and I think as the game went on, they passed a bunch of tests in that game. They got the first two goals, but they surrendered that one late later in that period, and then but they stuck with it. Then they get the back-breaking Wheeler goal in the third, which is a big goal. But then, you have to still shut that game down. And I thought that whole third period, whether it was 2-1 or 3-1, the Jets were going to win because Vegas just wasn't bringing anything in that third. And you got to give credit to Winnipeg for shutting it down as they did. That's the blueprint to win this series. Like that's exactly it right there. But you're right. Like Laurent Brossoit he looked shaky from the start. I mean, there was a couple though in the first period. I mean, obviously it was 0-0 after the first, but you look at those goal mouth scrambles. I mean, one of them was completely self-inflicted on his part, but it just looked like, I mean, there was a high shot that he kind of took high and it rear bounded funny, and he just didn't look calm and collected like Connor Hellebuck did on the other side. I mean, that save Hellebuck made early on off of I believe it was Brett Howden. That's a big save. Like, you need that save early to not get down, and he made that save. And Hellebuck had a relatively quiet night for the most part, but he was solid. And so yeah, I mean, I thought the Jets played exactly the way they needed to play, and that's a game that they can just build on, right? Like, that's such a reinforcing win for Winnipeg, that they're not falling back into any sort of whatever play. Like, I thought everybody looked engaged last night. I mean, it took a little while maybe for some guys to get into it. I believe you wrote a little bit of Mark Scheifele, but even then, I thought Mark Scheifele was all right. I didn't have really any issue with Scheifele. I thought Blake Wheeler was into it. I mean, you can say that there was a couple times where, but Blake was in on 3 goals last night. I mean, for a guy who is potentially even in his final year in the NHL, if not next year or whatever. I mean, he's in the last couple of years of his career. I think Blake wants this more than probably anybody on that Jets team, just because of how long his career has been. So I like the way that the Jets played. I mean, the biggest thing they have to do now is follow it up, right? That's probably the hardest thing in hockey, because now Vegas can really dissect the way that Winnipeg played. I mean, they'll think that they can play miles better, and they do. And the Jets have to be able to withstand that, because I imagine Vegas is going to come out on Thursday night, hard, heavy, speed, and the Jets have to keep doing what they did, stifle that transition game, which I thought was the biggest thing. I mean, they talked about this a ton coming into that game, that they needed to really slow down the speed of Vegas, and they did that exceptionally well on Tuesday night. So yeah, the blueprint's there, right? And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it was a good win, and that's a win you can kind of build off of. And drawing first blood away is probably the that was the best case scenario for the Jets, and they took care of business.
Yeah, I thought there were a lot of really good performance from the Jets, but perhaps the best was Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, I talked to some players before the series last weekend at Canada Life Center after practice, and the kind of consensus from guys was Pierre-Luc Dubois is built for the playoffs. He's a guy who just has all the tools that can take over a hockey game, and realistically, he sure did that. The first, the hard play he made on the boards to get the puck in front to Kyle Connor for the opening goal, and then the speed that he showed through the neutral zone to break in and score on Laurent Passois to make it 2-0. Those were just fantastic plays. And when Dubois is on, and he looks really on, he can be just such a huge factor. And I think the Jets are in a nice position if they're going to, have overall team play like that, and have the better goaltender in the series, and their defense holds up the way they did last night. They played against that transition game well, as you said, Scott. And then you got a guy like Dubois who's just got that playoff feel to him. Adam Lowry's another guy like that. It's a really good sign. Now, that doesn't mean anything when game 2 starts, because obviously there was a lot of upsets in the NHL in the first round of the playoffs, and it's not likely that all the underdogs are going to win these series, or the first night of the playoffs, I should say. Paul, did you think the Jets, what do you think maybe could be creeping in here that, you'd worry about with this team? We've seen night and day Jets sometimes this season. Is that something that could happen in a smaller scale in a series like this?
Adversity. How do they handle adversity? They had no, say hello to the dog, by the way. They had no adversity this game to speak of. Sure, 0-0 after 1. I guess they deserved a better fate at that point, but they never trailed. They never were under deluge in their own zone. So how they handle that first bit of adversity, whether it's a 2-goal Vegas period or the first loss, how they handle that is what I'm looking for, because that's what they didn't handle well when it started to spiral after New Year's. But Vegas just looked so lifeless. I was just going through my game notes here. I like to scribble down notes as it's going on, and I used the word lifeless a few times in my notes. That's what Vegas looked like to me. And so when they bring everything they've got, how the Jets handle that will be really interesting. I'm curious, Ted. One of the cool things we're doing with our coverage is you're taking a close look at a single player each game.
Yeah.
You looked at Mark Scheifele this first game. And what did you see? Because we're watching everything for the most part, but when you're doing that sometimes it gets some really cool observations. So share a couple of those if you don't mind.
Well, it was interesting because, you're watching for, is he as engaged as you'd like to see? Is he getting back in his own zone? Is he making smart plays with the puck? His, really great play early on. He had a toe drag in the offensive zone after taking a pass from Kyle Connor. He got a great shot off. I think it actually beat Brossoit and hit the back of his skate. I mean, it looked like it should have been a goal for the Jets, but just a lucky break for Vegas that didn't go in. One play I really pointed to that I liked out of Scheifele was when he had that chance near the end of the second period, and he got absolutely pummeled into the boards by Brett Howden. He was knocked to the ice, and there was only about 5 seconds left in the period, and the Jets worked the puck around, got a shot from the point. Scheifele was right back in front in that mix, and if there'd been a little bit more time on the clock, he might have scored to make it 3-1. I thought that was really good. I saw a good defensive play from him in the third where he flipped the puck out of the zone and just a smart play. He did also have a couple of plays in the offensive zone where he gave the puck away, and I didn't think there was any real need for it. He was just sort of trying to get the puck back to the point, and he just gave it to a Vegas player. And then another one, he tried to force a pass across the ice, and it ended up being a 3-on-2 for Vegas. So not always perfect, but he did have 5 shot attempts. He was 50-50 in the faceoff circle, and he had he had a few hits. So I think it was obvious that he was in it. But it's going to be fun to do this because we're going to look at a different player every game. And I want to talk to you guys, Scott. Obviously, we got to talk about maybe one of the most important players in the game last night, even though he didn't factor into the score sheet, and that was Morgan Barron, who had his face pushed into the exposed skate of Laurent Brossoit. It's just gruesome. Really fortunate that he wasn't cut in or near the eye. But he did go for what they said was 75 stitches. Perhaps somebody said maybe they stopped counting at 75. It's hard to believe. And he came back with a cage. He played pretty well, too. He was good penalty killer down the stretch, played good, tough hockey. It's obvious that meant something to the Jets bench to see him come back and do that. And, doesn't it just scream playoff hockey when players do things like that, like things that normal humans would be in the hospital for?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? You get a cut across the eye like that, you're calling an ambulance, right? There's no way. There's no way about it. I mean, you're calling an ambulance, and you're in the hospital for the night, and blah blah blah. I mean, Morgan Barron missed less than a period when you kind of look at the timing and all of it. And yeah, I mean, he comes back with a cage on. I thought, that does scream hockey. It screams kind of warrior. I mean, you look at all the tweets this morning, you got Pat McAfee, talking about it. I mean, this thing is transcending more than just the hockey world today. This is, one of the biggest, podcasters, radio kind of personalities in North America talking about this when they're normally talking about the NFL or whatever, right? Like that's how something like that can go kind of viral, right? I mean, you think about other sports where, guys aren't playing because they got a jammed pinky finger or something like that. And then you look at a guy who's, could have lost his eye, or whatever. And, he's been, sliced open and is back as quickly as they could get him back. I mean, I don't know how long it takes. I don't think I've had 75 stitches in my life, never mind. That's like I don't know, that's a hell of a job to kind of get that done and fixed. I mean, I think maybe the most maybe the coolest thing that I saw in that play, it's a weird term to use, was when Chandler Stevenson, because he was the one that kind of almost drove him down, Morgan Barron down onto Brossoit's skate, not obviously intentionally, but to see Stevenson understand that moment, outside of the hockey, the series, all that stuff, and kind of almost pull him back and then check to see if he was okay. Because, Stevenson probably saw the blood immediately because you could see it. It was already on the ice when you watched the replay. And so Stevenson, fair play to Chandler Stevenson there. I thought the most interesting clip after all that was they showed a close up on the skate. I guess it was the left skate of Brossoit, and you could still see blood on the end of this skate, which I think is like, again, it's hockey, right? This is playoff hockey. You hear about guys. I remember one year, Patrice Bergeron from the Boston Bruins, he was playing with two or three broken ribs, torn cartilage off of his rib cage. Like, you hear of all these kind of injuries that these guys play through and stuff like that, and how quickly guys get back and those sort of things. And so, yeah, no, Morgan Barron was extremely lucky. Obviously, he got moved up to the third line last night because Nikolai Ehlers is still nursing an injury there, and I thought he looked fine on that line, right? I mean, one of the things coming into this series was how good these lines were looking. And obviously you don't expect everybody in the playoffs to remain healthy. It's just not the way it goes. But they moved Nino Niederreiter off that line to move him up to the second line where Ehlers was playing. So that could have disrupted the way that third line played. But Adam Lowry's so steady there, and Mason Appleton's been really steady with Adam Lowry over the years. And so I thought Morgan Barron, who has played with those two before, really kind of acquitted himself nicely on that line coming back into it. So I mean, Morgan Barron's probably one of the most underrated or underutilized players on this team throughout the season, because I think he really brings a lot to the team, whether it's physicality, it's really good on the rush, not afraid to go to the net, all those things. So I think it was a bit of a boost, to see a guy like that come back to cage. I mean, that just, you kind of write yourself into Winnipeg lore that way, and then playoff lore. I got to think that you're going to be seeing, that image of Morgan Barron on more than just, Winnipeg broadcasts going forward, right? I mean, that's kind of the epitome of playoff hockey there. So yeah, it was a pretty cool. It was a cool thing that came out of what was a very it could have been a horrible thing. Yeah, it was. It's a good story out of a very, very scary kind of situation at the time, and that 75 stitches might have been the best case scenario for Morgan Barron last night, the way that all kind of played out.
And it was just what struck me. I was just going to add to that. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing like playing with broken ribs. I think we kind of latch onto this stuff a little. We over dramatize it a little sometimes, but what reason it's getting so much attention? When's the last time you saw a skate blade get under a visor like that? It's such a freaky looking thing, right?
Pushed up right against it, getting like driven into it. Like,
and then he happens to get pushed from behind to make it worse. And then, great. And then the way he looked when he came back, Lowry says, looked like he'd been attacked by a shark. What a great line that is.
I guess you can laugh about it now, but Paul, hey, I got to ask you, what do you make of this whole situation with Nikolai Ehlers? I mean, that was weird. You guys both have been around the Jets and the NHL for a long time. They don't usually make injured players available. I mean, and the reason they don't make them available is because they can't start talking about how they want to play, even if the coach doesn't think they're ready to play. The Jets let Nikolai Ehlers talk twice. He basically said he was good to go. He was going in that game. He was going to play. And the coach kept saying, no, he's day-to-day, he's day-to-day. And eventually, the Ehlers didn't play. I mean, it was really odd. I mean, the way it was handled was odd. I don't know whether that was gamesmanship or just something strange, but, is there concern that this might be leading to more games for Ehlers now? Because obviously his assessment that he's good to go is not true.
The only thing I find puzzling is that the Jets let him speak those 2 days, which is not their policy. So, and maybe that's an NHL playoff situation policy change, right? So that's the only thing I find puzzling. The rest I don't. The fact that Ehlers thought he was ready, said he was ready, but wait a minute, you got some medical experts here who think otherwise, right? So that didn't surprise me, and we probably should have trusted Bowness all along, because he's been a straight shooter with us all along. If he wants to say no comment, he will. Although I don't think he ever has. When he says we still got to make sure, yes, coaches are going to be overly cautious at times. And I was surprised when Nikolai didn't play. Having said that, that hit was neck and shoulder jarring. And if he's still got some tightness, boy, you don't want to mess with that. So it's understandable.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, I've been around this team for quite a long time, three coaches now, and it's just odd that they let him talk. I mean, and the only thing that kind of explains that to me at least, would be gamesmanship, and just kind of like, keep game planning for Nikolai Ehlers, right? Like, but like I just don't understand why that matters anymore in the NHL.
No.
Like, teams are so in tune with whatever, who's in the lineup, who's out of the lineup. Like, I don't think a lot of game plans really change. Like, there are some, like, you obviously have to watch out with Nikolai Ehlers on the ice, but is it that big of a shift in your playing philosophy if he's in the lineup or he's out of the lineup? And if you're Vegas last night, you got beat 5-1 without him in the lineup. So, what really is the difference? I mean, I guess, but Rick Bowness has also got 5 decades of coaching experience. I mean, he's seen it all. And I just wonder if this was a little bit of a carrot dangled in front of the media type thing for a little while, and that's what maybe he was telling the truth. He wasn't.
They were
really
just messing with us. Is that what you're saying?
I wonder. I wonder, right? I mean, keep it going. Keep that as the story, as part of the storyline throughout the first couple days. Maybe it detracts from some of the other things that you might be talking about. Maybe we should just believe Bowness going forward. I don't know. All he would say was he's day to day in a game time decision. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's not really saying that he's not going to play either. It wasn't like it was the extremes on it. One says he's playing, one says he's not. I just thought it was weird that Nikolai Ehlers not only, was skating with the team. He was in a regular practice jersey, I want to say, at one point. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But it seemed like Kevin Stenlund wasn't practicing, right? And Kevin Stenlund played. And I mean, nobody asked for Kevin Stenlund, but you're not the greatest talker. But it's just odd that Ehlers would have been talking, because that's just not what he was seen in previous regimes here. And so, maybe that was just maybe they thought he was going to play. Maybe there was something. Maybe there was a setback. I know, Rick didn't say it was necessarily a setback. He didn't really say it wasn't either. So I don't really. Well,
he said it wasn't
a setback. It was just I thought the way I read it. But anyways, it's it's strange. That's all. It's just a different approach, and maybe it's just comes right down to the fact that he woke up on Tuesday morning and it just wasn't going for him, right? Because he didn't take the morning skate, and the morning skate was optional. And Ehlers, will sometimes not take the morning skate or whatever. But I think on a playoff game day, he probably would have. And I think maybe that was the sign early on that he wasn't going to play, was he didn't suit up for the morning skate, just to kind of test out whatever it was. And, maybe to me at that point, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's already at a point where maybe you're hoping it's going to feel better later on in the day. And it just didn't. So, he didn't play. The Jets still played well without him. And I think if he's back in game 2, the Jets they add a different dimension to their game, especially on their power play. So, Vegas still has to look forward to that at some point in the series, you would imagine.
All right, I'm going to take the last word here, guys, because it really bugs me that Ryan Hartman was able to play in the first game of the playoffs and score the 2
overtime winner
for the Minnesota Wild, when all he got suspended for a pretty brutal hit on Ehlers that knocked Ehlers out for now a couple of games, including a playoff game, was 1 game. And we all know that was a meaningless game. It didn't matter to Minnesota whether they won that game or not. And, he should have been out for a playoff game, in my opinion. And it really is kind of a slap in the face for the Jets and for the Dallas Stars that's how it went. Now, I think we're running out of time, so I'm not going to let you guys respond to that one, but that was my rant of the day at the end. We'll be back with more jet setting after game 2. And it's been quite a start for the Jets. It should be very intriguing from here going on. So for Paul Friesen and Scott Billeck, I'm Ted Wyman. You've been watching Jet Setting on WinnipegSun.com.